Today we're looking at market research and in particular at quantitative techniques. So first of all, let's go back and have a quick reminder of different forms of market research. We've already seen that we can classify market research by the type of source, existing or new. And we've looked at secondary research sources, which use articles and statistics already made available for other uses that we can consult. And then primary research sources, where we have to go out and do the research ourselves by conducting questionnaires or interviews. So today this is what we're going to be focusing on. This type of research can also be separated by the types of data that you wish to collect, whether it is numerical or verbal, and by the objective of whether we are wanting to quantify an idea or a phenomenon or to explain it. So first of all, quantitative research is, as its name suggests, quantifying. It uses tools such as questionnaires and surveys. It quantifies and measures behavior. It tests hypotheses. It presents data in statistical charts. And it requires a large sample size to be reliable. On the other hand, qualitative research uses tools such as in-depth interviews, focus groups and discussions. It explores, describes, explains the behavior and the attitudes. It presents its findings in the form of words, or verbatim as we call them when we describe them in marketing terms. And it generally requires a smaller number of interviewees. Qualitative and quantitative research can provide complementary analysis. So we could start off by doing quantitative, followed by qualitative. For example, we could do a survey first to get some basic trends, and then find out how many people, or try and understand in more detail what the answers have revealed. We could also do it the other way around, starting with qualitative research, followed then by quantitative. So for example, we could explore with a more human interaction first and then quantify what we found. For example, the consumer expressed this idea. Is this idea very common? Is it very typical amongst our consumers? And what percentage of a sample would agree with that particular idea? Again, we can also classify research into categories such as what we call ad hoc or continuous research. Ad hoc is a one-off study, whereas continuous research goes on a regular basis and gives us a longitudinal study. So ad hoc then is data collected once for a specific problem as it arises. Generally, it is custom design studied. You commission the study from an agency and you plan independently and pay the full costs of the study. There is also the option for putting your request into what we call an omnibus study, where you buy space in a more general questionnaire which deals with lots of subjects, and you just get the answers for the questions that particularly were regarding your product. Continuous research is there to track the same responses from the same set of respondents over a regular period of time. So it enables us to follow trends. And there are two types that we use very regularly in marketing: a consumer panel, which gives us data on what consumers buy over time, and what we call a retail or distributor panel, which gives us data on what is sold in different retail outlets or shops over time. So quickly, the consumer panels will collect data from a certain set of consumers that have been recruited specifically for that. It's going to have a very large sample size, so it will involve thousands of consumers. And every time they purchase their groceries, their food and drinks, they're going to use a scanner and scan the barcode so that they can be analysed and turned into market research reports. The retail or distributor panel does a similar thing, but it collects data as consumers leave the shops by analysing all the data at the checkout in the retail environment. And it tells us about the sales of individual products, about sales objectives, about whether certain promotions, buy one, get one free, have been working for a particular promotion, for a particular product. So the retailers will give information to the product manufacturers about their own product and also about their competitor products in the same retail environment. So in the hypermarket sector, there are specialists such as Nielsen, and in the specialist retail market, for example, for telephones or in pharmacies, there are other specialists such as GfK. So let's quickly look at the research planning process. We have to know, first of all, very clearly what the problem is, what we're trying to achieve by research, and define this in terms of the research objective. Once we have a clear view of that objective, then we can develop the plan and decide whether it's going to be qualitative or quantitative research which will serve the purpose. We then have the phase of collecting and analysing the information, and finally presenting the findings and making the decisions. So how to design quantitative research? Well, quantitative research, as we've seen, is based on numerical analysis and statistics and is used to quantify attitudes, opinions, behaviours, or any other variable. We conduct it through questionnaires and polls and surveys, and we have to ask a representative sample so that we can get a generalization of the result compared to the whole population. Obviously, the larger the sample, the more credible the results are going to be. So when we are designing our questionnaire, there are a few key considerations you must take into consideration. First of all, what information do we need and in what format? Who are we going to have to talk to? How many of them? And again, you would prefer a large number than a small number. Are they representative of your target population? Are they easily accessible? And do they have the relevant expertise or experience in your field? Then you also have to think about how the questionnaire is going to be administered. That could be self-administered, for example, online, or it could be administered by an interviewer face-to-face. And finally, we have to think also about how the questionnaire is going to be analysed using particular software or specific sites. So there are lots of different types of questions that we can include. Let's take a look at some of them. Imagine we wish to measure the satisfaction of 600 customers who visited our store last year. So I could then decide that a relevant sample size may be 25% of those, so about 150 people. And I've decided to send an email with a link to an online questionnaire through, for example, SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. So then I need to design a question which can be analysed automatically. There are 150 questionnaires that I need to deal with, which provide helpful statistics to measure the satisfaction, but still which allow the customer sufficient choice to express different ideas that they have. So basically we have two types of questions: open questions which are completely free in terms of expression, and closed questions which give a predefined option for answers. When we're talking about quantitative research, we're generally going to prefer this second option of predefined options. So let's think why. We need our answers to be statistically measurable. So let's imagine I needed to have information on the age. How old are you is an open question, and it could give me any number of different responses within about 18 to 98. On the other hand, I could ask the same question but provide certain categories in which I can regroup the different answers I obtain. Secondly, I could ask, what is your marital status? And again, I would have various options of married, single, but I can also provide those options as particular groups so that consumers can already give the right information, and then I can statistically analyze each particular section. So what about the question, are you satisfied with our customer service? Well, let's look at how we could interpret that using different formats of closed questions. One form of closed question is what we call a dichotomous question, which has two opposing choices. So generally, yes or no, true or false. So are you satisfied with our customer service, yes or no? Well, that will give me a measure, but it doesn't give me very much leeway for interpreting the answer. So I can also then add multiple choice questions where we may have just one choice only. So please describe your level of satisfaction concerning customer service, and I give 4 options from very dissatisfied to very satisfied. I could also give a multiple choice question with several choices possible. For example, what do you particularly appreciate about our staff? And give them a number of options that they can choose. Another way of asking the same type of question is by a rating scale, or what we generally call a Likert scale after one of the creators. And those are generally on a point scale of either 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. So that gives us questions such as, please rate your level of satisfaction below 5 being the highest. And so I can rate different criteria, customer service, opening hours, etc. I could also use pictograms to give the same idea to make it more friendly. Another way would also be to use what we call a ranking question. Again, I provide the consumer with a certain number of criteria, and I ask them to put them in a particular order from 1 to 6, with number 1 being the most important. So some may choose the choice of products as their most important, and some may choose the prices. Finally, we also have what we call a semantic differentiation or differential scale, such as by Osgood. And again, that gives us 2 opposing ideas, and we ask the consumer to rate according to whether they feel the company is on one side or the other. So please rate our store staff according to the following items. Are they hostile or welcoming? Are they disinterested or dedicated? And it may give rise to analysis such as this, where I can see my staff is welcoming and polite and dedicated, but they don't have very good product training, they are useless, and they are particularly inefficient. So that would give me ideas on how to improve my staff. You will also have to include general questions about the demographics of the respondents. So the typical questions that you may include are the gender, the age profile, the professional category, annual revenues, geographic location, educational background. Obviously, if those criteria are relevant for your study. And sometimes you may also require filter questions. For example, if you are going to be talking about the products for a dog, then you need to ensure that the respondent actually owns a dog so that you can make use of his answers. So these types of questions will allow you to check how representative your sample is. It will enable you to provide basic descriptive statistics. So you could say, for example, that 60% or 65% of your respondents were female, and many of them were in a younger age profile. And it then enables you to cross-tabulate, so you could look particularly at the responses of women compared to the responses of men, and perhaps the responses of students compared to those of working people. And again, any combination of different populations that is of interest to the questionnaire. So a quick checklist then of best practice. Make sure you give a good explanation and reassure the person who is going to complete the questionnaire about the duration and the respective data. Divide the questionnaire into topics so that it's nice and easy to follow. Keep it short or the respondents will get bored and they may not complete the study. Start with easy questions first before you get more difficult. You don't want to scare them in the first page. A very important point is to always test the questionnaire first before you take it to your entire sample. That enables you to identify ambiguity and vocabulary that is not understood. And it also enables you to anticipate how the data is going to appear when you analyze it and to check whether the questions are going to provide the data that you need to solve your problem. And don't forget, obviously, at the end to say thank you to your respondents. So that's a quick overview of quantitative techniques. Now watch again and complete the learning exercises.